Hello, my beautiful, gorgeous dance baby, and welcome to another episode of More Than Dance. Today, we are going to discuss working on skills at home or when you're not at the studio. So, we all know that there is like a list of things to work on at all times. And if you don't know what you're working on, you know that that's a great place to start is to figure out like where are you and where do you get to go. So, there's a couple of things that happen when you're starting your dance journey. And one of those things is working on fundamentals. Fundamentals in heels dance can be simply just walking. We spend a lot of time on articulating the movement and the weight transfer of each foot. So, where is the foot aligned? Where is it going to land? Where is our positioning? Where's the rest of our body? And when you think about it in terms of that, because when we think about walking, we're just like, oh yeah, that's walking. When you think about everything that goes into the dance walk, you're thinking about a bunch of micro movements. And because when we're not at the studio, we're limited by a bunch of different things. I mean, if you're in an apartment, you're going to be limited by space. You might be limited by your flooring. You might be limited by the fact that there's not a gigantic mirror for you to look at. And all of those things play a part into what you're practicing and the skills that you are rehearsing. So once you get going and you're dancing and you have a few things you're excited to work on, think about what you're able to work on in your own space. So let's just say that step one is finding a space that you can actually practice. Now, when I think about ice hockey, I think, gosh, like how hard that would be to practice at home. It reminds me of tap dance, honestly, because do you know when you're a kid and you get tap shoes and you start learning tap, all you want to do is tap all around your house. And do you know the worst thing for your flooring at your house? Tap shoes. Tap shoes. Oh my gosh. It was just like a big no-no. Like, no, you're not allowed to tap at home. So it'd be really difficult to practice these skills. I remember doing it with my sneakers. I remember like sitting at school, like taking a test and just like tapping underneath my desk, like trying to understand like all the movements. And nothing was really the same. However, it was still helpful because there's different degrees of working on a skill. And I think that's the first thing to understand. So, step one, understand the degree at which you are practicing. If you have your own studio space, your level of practice is going to be deeper than that of someone who does not. I think about this in terms of like setting up your space to what you really want. So when I moved into this apartment, there was just a couple things that I wanted for fluidity throughout my day. So I wanted like an area for like my spirituality practice. I wanted to have an area that had a large mirror in case I wanted to work on dance. I wanted to have a desk that would allow me to like work on behind the scenes stuff like via computer. And then I wanted to have an area where I could film in front of. And I was very thoughtful when creating this area that I'm in right now because it needed to be conducive to 4 different things that I wanted to have in my life. And I know that it's sometimes hard to reinvent a space, but you can get pretty creative. This girl, she used to come to the studio and she took a part of her house and she was just like, this is going to be my dance studio now. And she got a mirror and, you know, it's not going to be the degree of what maybe the mirrors that I have at the studio, but it's something, and something is better than nothing. So, of course, like if I'm going to have a dance class, I'm going to definitely want to go to my dance studio versus my little in-house studio here. Though I have used this studio space with a client before because it came in handy one day. And I just remembered that. That's why I'm talking about it. So this also goes into like calling in parts of your life that you really want. And this goes back to be, do, have. Like when you really want to be that person, what does that person do? Well, that person probably has a space that's cultivated for what she's bringing in her life. So what I'm kind of analyzing as I'm sitting here in my space, it's very true. I'm bringing in the ability to work in the capacity that I get to. I'm getting a chance to work on a podcast, work on dance moves, have some type of organization around the stuff that we do in full circle. And then, of course, my desk where I sit at to work on the schedule and work on my DJ stuff. So it really does embody me, this whole space. And I challenge you to find a space in your apartment or your house where you can designate just a little bit of space. It doesn't have to be too much. I mean, more space the better for something like dance. Yes, true. And also, it doesn't have to be that big. Then you get to understand the degree at which you get to practice in this space. So if it is a large space, it's hardwood floors, you have a mirror, the degree at which you're going to practice is going to be deeper. If you're a musician and you have a space that is soundproof and you get to go in your own area and kind of just like go all out, that's going to be a little bit more helpful to you than someone who has to abide by like quiet hours, let's say, or other people in the house. So for that person, they might not get to use their amplifier as much as the person who has the whole soundproof room to themselves. We kind of take this information and we apply it to the things that we get to work on. For example, if I have a small space, I'm going to be working on smaller movements than my large movements. However, at the end of the day, all the small movements do make up bigger movements. So it is kind of cool to think of it like that. So step one, finding your space and understanding the level at which you're going to get to practice based off of your space. The next is step two, and it's understanding what you are actually practicing. And this is going to be something that you might know right now and something that you don't know. The best question that you can ask is go to your instructor and say, hey, what could I practice at home? And they're going to already intake like, okay, the first question is probably going to be like, okay, what's your space at home like? And then you're going to be like, okay, well, it's, this kind of flooring and, blank, blank, blank. I have about this much space. Like, what can I do? And your instructor is probably going to be like, okay, well, try working on these. And the other half of that is already knowing what you're going to work on. So you might come to a class and see every week that there are certain skills that you really want to work on, you really want to get better at. Maybe it's the coordination of your head and your arms. Maybe it's the way in which you align your hip with your rib cage. Maybe it's the way that you transfer your weight. Again, all micro movements that make up big movements. So step two is really honing in on what are you going to practice? And this is obviously leading you back to understanding step one, which is understanding your space and what's possible in that space. For example, if we have a small space and you really want to work on turns, probably not the best space for you to work on turns, especially if you have carpet. It's just not going to be the best situation. However, could you practice balancing on releve? Yeah. Could you practice the skills that it takes to turn? Like understanding the transfer of both feet to plie to releve? Yes. Could it be possible to put in even some strength exercises for your balance and for your releve? Yes. And this might be things that you would consult with your instructor on. So all of those skills are micro skills for the macro skill of a turn. Step three is knowing your routine of practice. So committing something to yourself that says like, all right, well, this is the skill that I'm working on. That's step two. And this is where I'm going to do it. Step one. And this is how long I'm going to do it for. I'm going to do this 30 minutes, 3 times a week. I'm going to do this every day, 3 times a day. I'm going to do this once a week for an hour. And you get to see how that works. And it is kind of like trial and error when you're thinking of like, how often should I do this? Well, take a look at your schedule and how busy you are. Take a look at how much you can realistically commit and take a look at how often you can use that space. Maybe you have to share that space with someone else in your household and you only get it at certain hours. And once you know how often you're going to be able to practice this, you're going to understand, well, okay, now what I get to do is commit and work on my discipline. And this goes hand in hand with trusting the process. Sometimes I have this thought of like, I don't want to spend my time doing that if it's the wrong thing that I'm doing. So it's like, I really want to be sure that what I'm putting my effort in is actually going to help. And that's why consulting with your instructor can be really helpful because it's kind of like a map and it's like, here's the map and here's the way you can do it. And also, do you want the shortcut? Because this is what that would be. And when you have that information, it can be easier to trust the process. So step 1, find the space. Step 2, understand what you are working on. Step 3 is understanding your commitment level, so how often you are doing it. And then step 4 is understanding unwritten things that can be involved in the practice. So something unwritten for a dancer would be, guess what you could do that has a very low degree of resistance? Practice musicality. You could practice understanding counts. If you're naturally someone who listens to music in a lyrical way or in a beat way, and you're really struggling with counts, you can start counting, or you can understand, okay, every time I hear that beat, I'm going to do this move that I am able to do here in the space that I've created. Let's go back to the idea of like doing our releves for our turns. Like maybe every like 7 and 8, you're going 7 and 8, and then you hold until 6. So it's kind of like coming up with a system for utilizing another skill that's very low resistance and your skill that you're really working on. So another skill, your spatial awareness. So maybe you have choreography that's in your head and you want to practice seeing what it's like to practice that exact choreography in different facings, because that's something that helps your memory get stronger. And if you can create a lot of body awareness around these movements, really it's just thinking about it in a different way. So for example, when we look into the mirror, we're relying on the mirror and we're relying on the picture that we're seeing to tell us that we're in the correct position. When you're not relying on the mirror and you're in your own space, potentially at your house, you're relying on your actual body to give you the picture in your head. So it's a real feeling exercise. It's seeing what the body feels like. And that's a skill that you get to work on at home when you're just standing in position. So it could be that you practice, 7 to 14 different positionings that you know of from a choreography. Maybe you're standing in them and you're just be like, oh, wow, okay, let me take note of what these movements feel like. For someone who's a guitarist, I mean, this could be like just going through, maybe you really are wanting to practice during when the quiet hours are. And maybe this is just like going through with the frets and understanding like the dance of your fingers and understanding like, okay, it goes from here to here to here to here. And then you're like, okay, like I've got that memorized. It's fluid. And the same can be true for, someone who's really working hard on their swing. Like maybe they're working on like their tennis swing or serve or their pickleball serve, and they're thinking about, okay, when I do that, I have to shift my weight on my right and then shift back to my left, follow through here and make sure my wrist. So it's really paying attention to the stuff that is small that you get to do when you're doing the big thing. So in step 4, we're seeing these other types of skills that go into our big skill. So another one, we got musicality. We've got understanding our alignment based off of feeling. Another one can be working on your performance quality and really getting used to practicing what your face is doing, how you might be connecting with your audience, how your alignment can shift, and how are you going to shift your face? How are you going to elongate through your body and lift without kind of gripping through your face? So these can be skills that you can incorporate as well. So again, going back to this idea of the releve, now maybe you're layering in, you've got the releve, we talked about that. Now we got the musicality that we're layering in on 7 and 8. Now maybe our face, we want to change our face and we want to go like a smile and then like a more sensual face. So a smile on 7 and then a more sensual face on 8. So meanwhile, we're working the coordination of our face and a movement with musicality. So can you kind of see like how I'm getting a chance to layer in all of these skills that are all micro skills, but I'm doing so in a way that's allowing me to do it from my home, from my smaller space that's not as big of a studio, or even just something that's related to my goals, because maybe my goal is to articulate my face more often. Maybe it's to keep my eyes out. Maybe it's to work on my timing with my face. Or maybe it's to understand that when I'm concentrating so hard, it's so hard not to do this. And if you're just listening right now, the face I made was like kind of this like face that's a thinky face. How often does that happen when you dance? And it could mean that you get to analyze yourself a little bit more to understand step 2, which is to figuring out, what are you going to do at home? What skills are you going to work on? And the best way to figure this out, other than asking your instructor, is watching your videos. So hopefully you're collecting some videos of yourself dancing routines that you've learned, or maybe even yourself in your space working on these skills, getting a chance to see what it looks like as if you were an audience member. This is so helpful. And the same can be true of, like, if you're a musician, you might be videoing or recording yourself so that you can hear how it sounds. Or if you're working on your golf swing, you could record that as well and see, like, oh, wow, how funny. I thought I picked up my back foot when I did that, and now I see in the video I didn't at all. It can be funny what our body feels like we're doing. In reality, we're not doing it at all. I always think about that in terms of, like, when I work on my arms and stuff for certain styles of dance, I'll think that I'm being so strong with my arms, and then I'll look back and I'll be like, oh man, you could have actually been way stronger and it would have been looking a little bit better than it does. And then the last thing that I get to mention is this idea of strength and flexibility. So this can be embedded in with step 2 when you pick your move that you're working on. It can also be its own separate thing. So there could be this, like, conditioning thing that you do. It could be based off of your whole entire body or a specific move. So something to consider would be your flexibility within your hamstrings, your strength within your feet, so pointing and flexing and really getting your muscles to activate when you're pointing your toes and your ankles. Another thing could be just the idea of lifting your arms above your head. I'm going to do this in this video here. If you're watching, you can lift them here, and then you can also lift them here. And something that's, like, really great for that, just a small example, would be to, like, take a broomstick and put it behind your head and lift your arms up all the way as if you had an extended vertebrae that went above your head, and to try and keep your shoulder girdle back and beyond so that your arm is going up behind your head. And so what this brings me to is our dance posturing, because when you're thinking about your alignment and your posture in dance, things are going to look better the more upright you are. Think about it. If we're, like, down here and we're slouched and we're doing a movement, that's not going to be that helpful. And sometimes we think about it in terms of flexibility. And I got to say, a lot more times than flexibility, it's going to be strength that's going to help you get your arms behind there. And that's a very easy, I mean, you don't even have to be in your dance space to do that. You could be at your desk doing that in between client calls. Just lift it up 10 times and just see how that adds to your shoulder strength and flexibility. So I'm hoping that these 4 steps help you to work on some things that you're really excited about working on within dance or other activities. And one other thing that I'm excited to mention is this idea of perfection. Sometimes we're going to wait to work on something until something feels perfect. Like, my schedule feels perfect right now, and I can make the time to do this, so therefore I'm going to practice now because it feels right. Or, now that I have my space executed the exact way that I want to, now I'll practice. So this gets you in the habit of waiting for something to be perfect before doing something. And I'm here to tell you, get comfortable being in the mess where it doesn't feel that right, where it doesn't feel that perfect. It can be very easy to think about practicing dance at home and the idea of, well, I'll just run the routine. Oh, I don't have a space to run the routine, so can't practice at home. So we want to help ourselves with this barrier to entry. And when you're getting an opportunity to split up one full routine and have it be micro movements, you're allowing yourself more possibilities, more opportunity for growth. And breaking something up into minor skills is actually going to be even more helpful for you. And this is exactly what I would do if we were spending time together in a private one-on-one. My challenge for you this week is to finalize your dance area in your space and figure out exactly which skill you want to work on for this week. And then give yourself a time instruction for it. So maybe it is one skill once a week for 10 minutes. Something that feels right to you, and it doesn't have to be exact, and you get to adjust it as the weeks go. And then, of course, I want to know how it goes. So if this helps you be more accountable, go ahead and take a video of it and tag me. And I'll, one, get to see your progress, and two, hold you accountable. As we wrap up this episode, I want to remind you that real growth happens when you're doing things frequently, when you're practicing your skills frequently, and when you're making dance part of your everyday life. So don't let something as I'm not making it to the studio as often as I wish, or I don't have the right perfect space, don't let those be your obstacle. Getting an opportunity to dance in the studio is obviously going to be the first choice. And there's so many other hours throughout the week that you can practice these skills. So even if you're coming to the studio like 3-4 times a week, there might be some dead space in your day that you can fill with some skills and some deep work practice. Making dance part of your everyday life is going to allow you to see results faster. So just to recap, we have our step 1, finding your space and understanding the level at which you're going to be able to practice within your space. Step 2 is, of course, looking into what exactly are you going to practice. Step 3 is understanding your frequency and the dedicated time that you're putting aside. And step 4 is knowing which other elements you can combine with your step 2. So in dance, we talked about adding in musicality, style and performance, and strength and flexibility. We talked about not letting your space be a barrier of entry, and we talked about making sure that we aren't waiting for the most perfect conditions to practice. And lastly, we talked about filming and recording the process so we have notes on where we did really well and where we have more to improve on. If this was helpful for you at all, I would love to know, and it would mean the world to me if you left a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the dance floor.